This is Aaron Levine, LG Insurance, with another episode of the And Insurance Podcast, probably one of the most special episodes that I've ever done. I'm going to try to keep my composure, but I have my little brother, Avi Levine, here. What's up, Avi?
Not too much, man. I'm excited to be here. We've been planning this for a couple months now, I think. Maybe even a year.
I tried to have you down early mid-COVID when I first started getting this podcast rolling, and then there were some issues. Well, we got to be indoors and we're wearing masks, and so we put it on hold, and then we figured out a day for you to get down, and we're going to hit the beach in a little bit. So it's good to have you on. Good to be able to share your story, promote what you do. I don't really know what you do, so tell us a little bit about the business that you're in and your company, Star Funding. Tell us about what you do.
Sure. So what I do, that's actually a really good question. I mean, in short, we look at how do we assist small, medium-sized businesses with different types of working capital.
Okay.
Right? So businesses will come to us and they'll say something like, hey, I have a purchase order from Walmart and they want to buy 15,000 of these cups, and I need $100,000 to produce the cups in China or wherever they're being made. So we'll finance the production or acquisition of the product for them to get it delivered to Walmart, right? And then our financing is paid back when Walmart pays their bill. So we provide a very specific bridge type financing for companies to fill large purchase orders or complete large projects. Could be selling cups to Walmart. They could be selling medical supplies or technology to the federal government, or they could be selling products to small businesses. It could be a lot of different things.
So are these a lot of solopreneurs, small businesses, or are these mid-sized companies that also use your funding sources so they don't have to keep all that cash on the books?
It's actually a little bit of both, right? Okay. We get to see the startup company that comes in and says, this is my first order ever, and I need help financing it.
Right.
Or we get to see the company that's been around for 25 years and they want to buy out a partner, and the partner's taking cash out of the business, so they need money to handle the production.
Right.
Or we see the larger business that might be $150, $200 million in annual revenue that says, I need $5 to $10 million for a 60-day period to cover a certain transaction, and we'll come in and assist them. So, one of the really great things about what we do is that we see all different types of businesses. It makes it pretty exciting.
Neat. I know, there was one time you connected me with a company out of Australia who was looking to launch a U.S.-based operation with what they were doing. I don't know where that ever wound up, if you ever wound up getting them set up.
Dog toys or something?
No, not dog toys. I don't know. They were selling like steak knives or like little small chintzy electronics in the U.S. or something like that. Yeah. I don't remember, but all the emails were always at, off hours to us, obviously, because we were trying to help them with their insurance coming U.S.-based to get them the proper coverage as the manufacturer of these products for the retailer that they were ultimately selling them to, right? So insurance is obviously comes into play quite a bit in what you do, and not everybody looks at that until somebody forces them to look at it. So it's quite interesting, some of the stuff that you pull through. So tell me, what are some of the cooler things that you've seen that you've financed?
Oh man,
was there a tequila brand that you financed?
There's actually a tequila brand that I've invested in on the side.
Okay, got it.
More or less.
Still yet to get a bottle.
I'm yet to get a bottle too. So we'll see what happens with that investment. But we could definitely talk about that later. It's pretty cool. We're excited. Hopefully within the next 45 days we'll have it here in the U.S.
That's great.
The bottles are in Mexico. The distillery's working on the filling and the product. We have our final labels are coming in from China. So it's really pretty exciting.
That's awesome.
Yeah. But the cooler things that we finance, I mean, we get to see a lot of really interesting projects, right? Like like through COVID, everything shut down.
Right.
And the only people that we were hearing from were people selling to the federal government.
Oh.
Gloves, masks, syringes, different types of medical supplies, like all these supplies that nobody can get a hold of. The government's trying to make these massive purchases, right? I mean, the retailers stopped buying. A lot of them closed their doors. They put orders on hold. So it jammed up a lot of our clients. But we had one group come to us. There were two guys that were, they worked for Amazon in IT. And they're like, oh, we have this idea in this project. We can get these syringes. And we're bidding on this bid. It was like $12 million. Right. And so in the back of my mind, I'm like, this is never going to work out for them. There's too much other competition. There's some serious players in the space. But let me help them with what they're doing, right? I appreciate the grind. I built up where I am today from just a total grind out of nowhere. And so when I see people putting in that effort, I want to help them too, right? So these guys ended up coming back to me like 90 days later after doing some paperwork and answering some questions saying, Avi, we got this contract and now we need to know how to finance it. I'm like, okay, what do you want me to do? You know? And so long story short, they filled this contract. They both ended up making, a nice return. They quit their jobs at Amazon.
Wow.
And ended up going into a separate business for sourcing specialty projects. And one of them actually got into like finance brokerage, like doing something similar to what I do, because he saw the process and was like, that was really cool. So that's a pretty good story to tell.
That's neat.
Yeah. Outside of that, we've done electric scooters that people are selling to Walmart. We've done cleaning supplies. We did some specialty technology that was being sold to the federal government for use in the submarines. Wow. That was an interesting one. And then just a lot of gadgets and widgets and
random
all sorts
stuff.
of random things. Yeah, a lot of apparel.
We have some apparel manufacturers. We have a guy that just makes scarves. I don't know if I tried to connect you with him at some point, but he's
Probably
always
not.
fulfilling
I don't remember
orders.
you giving me any referrals, but that's okay. We can
we'll
talk
get to
about that later.
He's always making scarves for Walmart, and whatever it was.
Yep.
So there's a lot of those companies out there. So how did you get into this short-term money lending business?
In kind of a roundabout way, right? Like, I don't know if you remember. So I've been in this business now for about 10 years,
Wow.
right? 9 or 10 years. Working with Star Funding for that period of time. And that's like a lifetime today, right? Nobody stays with the same business for 10 years today, especially in our age group. But things have been going very well. So I've stuck around. And I ended up, so prior to that, I don't know if you remember, I was working for like Equinox Fitness. Mm-hmm. I moved to Massachusetts to work with Dad's friend Gad for a little while. And then ended up at Bonobos. And when I was at Bonobos, I learned a lot about affiliate marketing and started to launch some projects with a friend of mine that also worked at Bonobos doing affiliate marketing, blogging, different types of content.
Right.
When you think back 10 years ago, people were just starting to buy stuff online. Right? Like, you weren't like, oh, let me order this thing to my house. I'll just go to the store and pick it up. And Uber was just becoming like, I could take an Uber wherever I want to go. And some people are like, what do you mean you're going to order a cab from your phone? How are you going to trust that guy to get in his car, right? That's totally insane.
It's still insane.
It's still insane, the whole idea of it, right? But it's part of what everybody does. So as I got into it, I started looking at what are some of the larger ticket items that we could market, right? Mm-hmm. We were marketing Uber, and we were marketing Hotels Tonight and all these other, soap.com, right? And what are some of the larger ticket items we could start to market? So we got into hotel stays for conferences. Mm-hmm. And then we found out there was this opportunity for an online lender that would give us $100 every time we referred them a client that would take out a loan.
Right.
And so, I got really scrappy. I put together flyers and business cards. I sent people to trade shows. They would sneak into the trade shows, put flyers on all the tables for all the vendors that were there, right? And I would get these random phone calls like, what is this?
Right.
Like, how do you borrow money through the internet? Right? Nobody was interested in doing that 10 years ago. And it was just about generating leads.
Right.
When I got the lead, I had no idea what I was doing because I didn't know anything about this financing space when I was doing it, and slowly learned a little bit more. I was giving deals to Eric Gunther, cousin Eric.
Sure.
Right? He was working in factoring at the time. And it got to the point where I started meeting with lenders about work for them full time. And the guys at Star Funding were like, well, you don't know anything about finance. How are you going to be successful here? And I said, well, you clearly don't know anything about marketing and lead generation. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting here with me, right? So they gave it a shot.
Right.
I remember the first day I started, the question was, I asked them, what are my goals and targets? And they're like, as long as you're happy with your W-2 at the end of the year, you'll stay. If not, hopefully you'll leave. And so 10 years later, that's where we are.
Nice.
But it's been very eye-opening to see like so many different types of businesses in the world that come to us. Beyond just the person that says, oh, I have this big, huge purchase order. You also hear a lot of the smaller stories, like the single mom that started a makeup business, and then she got her first order from a small boutique and she needs help. Or you have, a minority-owned business that just can't seem to get anything together because maybe they have poor credit. Right? And these are all challenges that real people face. And the type of financing that we do solely relies on looking forward and their goals, right? We're not a bank where we're looking at somebody's personal credit and their past sales and their history. We're saying if you have an order, looking forward, that a product you're going to deliver in 30, 60, 90, 120 days, we could get in there and we can help you,
so
regardless of the challenges you face.
You own the product, you resell it, and then give them their profit, or you work on straight like a lending basis?
So it's not so much lending, it's more of like a financial accommodation.
Right.
So depending on which area of the transaction we're in, we actually purchase the product,
right,
resell it to them,
sure,
right before they deliver it to their customers. So they're the person that's delivering it, right, or they're the importer of record or the manufacturer of record, whatever it might be. And that's just more or less of us making a financial accommodation. And then on the factoring side, we purchase the accounts receivable,
right, and
then we provide an advance against their incoming payments. But thinking about insurance, there's so many times where people come to us, and one of the line items in our due diligence is, show us your insurance certificate. And a lot of people say, I haven't gotten one yet. They're in business for 5 years, 10 years. They think that because they're buying goods from another manufacturer, that any liability passes on to them.
Right.
Or they think that when their goods are on a boat, the boat's insurance is going to cover them, and on a truck, it's going to be covered by the truck. And they just think they're like immune to this need of insurance, which is totally insane. And I'm sure this is a conversation you have all day.
They're fully exposed, and they just don't realize how exposed they are in putting something on a container. That ship has zero responsibility for your goods.
Right.
And when that container ship full of Lamborghinis and BMWs went down, I'm sure BMW and Lamborghini had a ton of insurance on those cars that are sitting at the bottom of the ocean right now.
I hope so.
Because small businesses lose containers all the time. We've done insurance just for the container, for the ocean cargo piece of it, because that's always going to be separate from their traditional insurance policy, which is going to be covering them for their manufacturer's liability. If you're putting your own label on it and you are selling it in a retail or wholesale setting, you are responsible as a manufacturer, even though you're buying it from China, Sri Lanka, Vietnam, wherever it's being manufactured. If your label's on it, you're liable. If someone else's label's on it and you're reselling it on their behalf as a wholesaler, totally different scenario, but everybody wants their own label on stuff.
You're still liable, right?
Don't put your label on it. Let somebody else's label stay on it, and then they take the risk. We had this guy wanted to open up a weed accessory store, so not selling marijuana, but he wanted his own brand of rolling papers. Kicked him out from every insurance company possibly out there just because he wanted to brand his own rolling papers.
Right.
Because we don't know what's in them. He didn't manufacture them. He's just buying them, and someone's putting a stamp on them.
Well, it burns
and
the tips of your fingers.
Them,
burns off your fingerprints.
But he's the one that's liable for it. I'm like, why do you want that? People don't realize that their branding makes them liable. But
what if you gave everybody? What if you gave everybody a free roach clip, and then they wouldn't burn their fingers?
Most insurance companies don't want anything to do with any of that stuff.
Oh.
So they're going to steer clear of it. But when we can find these types of people insurance, it's 5 times more expensive than they think it should be at $500, right?
Right.
They think it should be $500 a year, but in reality, the liability, the risk is so much more, and it just becomes a nightmare. So anytime we get some of these people with small product, I give them a price before I go out to the market and quote them.
Absolutely.
Because I've done it so many times. It's like, all right, it's going to be $5,000. It's going to be $25,000. It's going to be significantly more expensive. And if you're not willing and ready to cut a check for that much money, we're not even going to start the conversation, because I've been down this road so many times that I just can't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can't get through it.
I mean, we see it. We just see it all the time, and we require, if we're buying goods from somebody, that we're listed as a lost payee.
Sure.
Right. So if we're taking exposure, we're putting out millions of dollars to purchase this product,
right, and
the product disappears, we need to make sure that we're the ones collecting the payment against the insurance. And there's another level of insurance that we look at also, and that's credit insurance.
Oh.
Are you familiar with that?
I know it.
What?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have, the way we operate when we buy our clients' accounts receivables,
right,
we have a big blanket policy, right? So we use COFAS. We buy a blanket policy that covers a couple $100 million a year in accounts receivable that we're insuring under our policy.
Sure.
But if somebody else comes in and has their own credit insurance policy, then they're listing us as a lost payee on those.
Right.
So in the event a customer defaults, we end up getting covered in the end, right?
Sure. It's your reinsurance, right? It's your protection to do whatever you can do to make sure at the end of the day you're going to recover the money that you're putting out,
right?
And you're not stuck with 100 cases of widgets that you can't do anything with.
Right. And the interesting part is a lot of people call up and they talk about risk, right? And I think of what we do is not a risk-based product, right? We're not lending money based on risk. Sure. We're providing money as a service, right? Because you can't price in risk, right? If you want to price in risk, you're talking about cash advances, where they're charging you 45% for the year, right? You're borrowing $100,000, you're paying back $145,000 over 12 months. It's totally insane. That prices in risk because when they're doing those loans, they know that 2 out of 5 people are going to default.
Right.
So the other 3 are paying for those 2 defaults.
Which is insurance in general.
That's pricing in risk. They're self-insured, right?
Insurance is a pooled product,
right? Where for us, we get insurance, right? So we know for a fact that we're going to get paid back, even if the end customer defaults, and that's the risk we're underwriting, the end customer payment, right?
What if somebody misses their deadline? So say I'm manufacturing scarves and I have a contract with Walmart, but my product doesn't show up on time and Walmart says, we don't want your shipment anymore.
Well,
what happens then? You've already paid the manufacturer on behalf of, whoever hired you, right? Whoever borrowed the money from you. What happens when in those situations?
In a situation like that, you would change the label. So instead of it being a scarf for the winter, it's now a summertime cover-up. Right, you just got to repackage it and deliver it, and sometimes charge more for it. No, that's real, especially today with all the supply chain disruptions and the delays in shipping. I mean, more so when you think back 12 months ago when it was taking what would normally take 30 days for a container to arrive from China to California.
Right.
Even with congestion, people aren't seeing their goods for 45, 50, 60, 70 days in some instances, and it created a lot of issues. One of my good friends was actually selling to a subscription box service, and he was selling a holiday product.
Okay.
Right? And he was late. One of the containers was late in the shipment, and they canceled it.
Right.
They said, "Oh, we got the first one. We'll be fine. We don't need the second one." So he's sitting there with 180,000 pieces of this one product, one product, that he's like, I can't even give it away,
right?
Because it's past the season.
You have to sit on it till next season.
The market was hot for this product, so now everybody has it,
right?
And he's just sitting there with it. I'm just eventually just got to throw it out, but he got stuck. They wouldn't take it.
That's wild.
Yeah, discounts, everything. No, we don't want it.
I have a friend that does the insurance for one of the larger sneaker manufacturers out of California. And they had a container full of sneakers stuck in the ocean. Mm-hmm. Ocean, wet, mold.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So they had all these sneakers, and they wound up cleaning the sneakers.
Really?
A lot of them were salvageable, and they went to salvage, but they had to get creative. And then they said, those gel packs, those salt packs that absorb the moisture, well, they had to triple the size of the gel packs in the sneakers for the next container coming over.
Absolutely.
Just creative stuff, but it still cost them $200,000 in loss for this container of sneakers sitting in the ocean for so long. Crazy story.
Yeah, I mean, there's that issue, but there's also the issue of when did that moisture even get into the box? Was there an issue at the factory?
Right.
Was there an issue when they shipped the product? Every time we make a big purchase, we send in an SGS or an Intertech, which are the world's largest global inspection companies, to look at the product. Nice. They touch it, they feel it. They might say, there's 50 pallets. We're going to open up every 5th pallet. We're going to take 5 random boxes, open them, weigh them, check for moisture, the color, drop the box and make sure everything's what it's supposed to be.
Right.
Because otherwise there are situations where people could be shipping trash right from the factory, and then you get it and you're and they're like, oh, we don't know. It was fine when we delivered it.
Right.
Right.
Well, the small guy's trusting the Chinese manufacturing plant to deliver what was supposed to be delivered, and QC is tough.
That makes it tough.
Cheap. That makes it tough on insurance also.
Yeah. You have to inspect
not
the
knowing
goods.
What's going on with the product at the end of the day, and we see it in domestic manufacturing too. We've had certain issues with different kinds of products. So, who should be calling you, right? Anybody that's got a product or an idea that they want to bring to market or get into a retail space or fulfill a contract of some sort. with the federal government that needs a bridge loan should be reaching out to you.
Yeah, I mean, anybody that needs working capital, production finance, working capital, factoring, really any type of money, right? If they're sitting there saying, if I had this money, I could do X, Y, Z for my business,
right?
They should call, right? The only thing I could do is maybe tell them no if it's not a fit, but you have to start looking somewhere, right? Before I actually got into the facility here today, I was on a phone call with somebody who talked himself out of working with me, and I said, "What's going on?" And he said, "Well, I don't have enough of a history."
Right.
And I'm like, "Where the fuck have you been for the last 30 minutes? Like, you don't need a history. Like, I've been telling you this. Like, we're good, you know?" And he's like, "No, it's not going to work." And I don't know what it was, but anyways, really anybody that's looking for capital.
Listen, I think it's a good conversation for anybody to have with you that has an idea, right? That obviously doesn't have the money to bring the idea to market, but you have so many resources and you've been doing this for so long that having a conversation with anybody that's got this idea, you'll bring valuable insight to them.
More of an opportunity than an idea, right? Ideas are a little bit early for me. Like I can't finance an idea,
right?
But I could finance an opportunity.
That's
Someone
fair.
says, "Oh, I could sell these to that person. I could finance these for you to sell to that person."
Sure.
Or somebody has a small business and they want to grow it. They just think they can't because they don't have the working capital.
Right.
Well, if I had more money, I could sell to another school district, or I could sell to another customer, or I could sell to Walmart, or I could sell to a big distributor.
Right.
That's where we come in, and that's where like the amazing stories are made, because we take these small businesses and we ramp them up as far as the owner can manage it.
Right.
It's crazy.
That's awesome. So listen, don't call or go on Shark Tank. Call Avi Levine. He's got the money from Star Funding. He's going to hook you up to make sure that everything goes smoothly, get your product to market, make that money, and then you can turn around and reinvest it into the next product or the next retailer and continue to grow your business. I think bridge loans, these purchase order funding opportunities are tremendous, and it's a great help, and you obviously get to make money while you're doing it, and then you get to send the referral to me for the insurance. So life is good.
They could afford to pay for their insurance at that point.
And hopefully they'll use that money to pay for their insurance in full, so we don't have to deal with any of the nonsense that goes with it.
That's right.
Avi Levine, thanks for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
See you later.
You got it.